Welcome to New Tuckies. My name is Mrs. Ramlal. This is a video I have made for the grade 12s to help them with their final exam preparation. In this video, I will look at the Limpopo Prelim Paper 1, the 2021 paper. Right, 1.2. Give the correct biological term for each of the following descriptions. Write on only the term next to the question numbers in the answer book. 121. The part of the nervous system that increases the heartbeat. Now, your key word is increases heartbeat. This is something you must know. Of course, it's the sympathetic nervous system that increases the nervous system. You should already know parasympathetic will decrease the heartbeat. Write this down so you don't forget it. 122. The nerve fibers that joins the two cerebral hemispheres together. Two cerebral hemispheres together, that's the corpus callosum. Don't write corpus luteum. Be careful when you are writing this and concentrate and check your work. 123. The hormone that regulates the water concentration in the body, that we know is ADH. I would not write ADH. I would write the whole word antidiuretic hormone because it's very easy to make a mistake with abbreviations. 124. The fluid that protects the developing embryo against dehydration, amniotic fluid. 125. A tiny plastic tube with a hole in the middle, inserted in the eardrum to drain fluid from the middle ear. This is used in babies and this is a grommet. 126. The tip of the sperm containing enzymes. Of course, that is the acrosome. 127. The structural unit of the nervous system, a neuron. 128. A defect in the eye where the lens is irregularly curved. That is astigmatism. Spelling is important. Make sure you sound out your word so you spell it correctly. 129. The narrow passage forming the lower end of the uterus, that is the cervix. And then the last one, 1 to 10, the structure within the ovary that is responsible for the formation of progesterone, that we know is the corpus luteum. Be careful here. You can see there's corpus callosum and corpus luteum here. Concentrate when you're writing and then check your work after you've written the term. 1.3. Indicate whether each of the statement in column 1 applies to A only, B only, both A and B or none of the items in column 2. You must write down A only, B only, both A and B or none next to the question number in the answer book. 131. When the thyroid gland produces more thyroxine, the hormone thyroxine, what is that? Now, when a gland secretes too much, hyper means too much and hypo means little. So there we know the answer is already A only, not just A. 132. The part of the brain involved in picking up a pencil. Now, you picking up a pencil, so that's a voluntary action, so that's the cerebrum. But you're picking up the pencil and you don't fall, so it helps you to maintain balance. So it is both A and B. This is a nice question. 133. What has an exocrine as well as an endocrine function that you should know? The pancreas, so it's B only. 1.4. The diagram below represents a section through the central nervous system. 1.4. Give the letter and the name of the part that serves as a pathway for nerve impulses to and from the brain. To and from the brain. So here's the brain. To and from. That can obviously only be C, the spinal cord. B. Give the letter and name of the part that is responsible for the ability to play chess. Now, playing chess, it's a voluntary action. So that, of course, is A, the cerebrum. Give the letter and the name of the part that is sensitive to the carbon dioxide concentration in the body. Well, that, of course, is the medulla oblongata, and that's B. 1.42. State 2 ways in which the brain is protected. 2 ways. You could have said the meninges, the cranium, or the cerebrospinal fluid. Make sure you spell cerebrospinal fluid correctly. 1.5. Study the diagram that follows. 151. Identify part A. Part A, if you look, is the tube that goes past the 3 glands. So that is the vas deferens or the sperm duct. Identify part B. Part B is this part here that's coiled on the testes that we know is the epididymis. Spelling is very important here. Identify part D. Part D is the vas deferens when it enters the penis is now known as the urethra. 152. Give the name of the part that protects the sperm against the low acidity in the urethra and the vagina. That, of course, is the prostate gland. And then 153, state one function of part B. Now, part B, we said, is the epididymis. So we know the epididymis stores sperm temporarily until the sperm is mature. Right, 2.1. Study the graph below of the menstrual cycle and answer the questions that follow. Now let's look at the graph. You have the hormonal regulation of the female reproductive cycle. Here on the one side you have the days. On the dependent variables you have the hypophysis hormone levels, development of the follicle, ovarian hormone levels, and thickness of the endometrium. 2.1.1. On which day does ovulation take place? Now, we look for the bursting of the Graafian follicle and the peak of the LH. So for me, it looks like day 14, but I see the memo also accepts 15 as well. 212. State two functions of luteinizing hormone. What does luteinizing hormone do? Luteinizing hormone causes the Graafian follicle to burst. So it's responsible for ovulation. Also is responsible for the formation of the corpus luteum. Right. 213. Describe the changes in the levels of LH shown in the graph. Now, can you see here, up to day 12, the LH levels are low. Then at day 14, it increases or peaks or increases sharply as the memo says. And then after day 14, there is a decrease or the levels remain low. That was a nice question. Right. 214. Explain the negative feedback mechanism that exists between progesterone and FSH. This is something you should already know, grade 12s. High levels of progesterone will inhibit the release of FSH so that no follicles develop. So no ovum is released, there's no ovulation, and there can be no fertilization. Right. 215. Explain why it can be deduced that fertilization did not take place in the 28-day cycle in the graph. Now, if you look at the graph, can you see? The corpus luteum is degenerating. Progesterone levels are decreasing. FSH levels are now increasing, and what's happening to the LH levels? It's also decreasing. This you had to take from the graph. It says in the question. 216. Describe the development of the zygote until it's ready for implantation. Well, that's easy. The zygote will undergo mitosis to form a mass of cells called the morula. The morula will undergo more mitosis to form a hollow-filled cavity called the blastocyst, and the blastocyst is implanted in the thickened endometrium. Right, that was a nice question. Let's move on. 2.2. In the diagram below, the letters A, B, and C. So yes, A, B, and C represents regions of the human nervous system that can be blocked by chemicals to make medical research. Using the key to the diagram, write on only the letter that indicates the following. Right. So we can see in the diagram the brain and the spinal cord and the toe. So A, what happens if the patient can move the toe but cannot feel the stimulus? Right. That means there's a block. So you can feel, right? You can move the toe, but you cannot feel. So of course, there's a block at C, the sensory neuron. B, if the skin of the toe is stimulated, the toe moves and the patient knows that it's moving. So you can feel it and you can move. So then definitely we know there's no block. C, when the skin of the toe is stimulated and the toe moves involuntarily, but the patient cannot move the toe voluntarily or feel that it's moving. Of course. So now the skin is stimulated, the toe and they both, toe and foot, move involuntarily. So where's the problem? The block is obviously here at the spinal cord. Okay. And the last one, the patient can feel the toe is being touched, but cannot move. Cannot move, so where's the block? At B. Right, 2.3. Sipo is pricked by a thorn while playing soccer on the recently leveled school ground with his friends. Sorry. He immediately stops kicking the ball and starts jumping around with the pricked foot up. Describe what happens the moment Sipo stops kicking the ball and jumps around with the pricked foot up. Now, what has happened in his foot? The receptors in the skin receive the stimulus. The stimulus is converted into a nerve impulse. The impulse travels along the sensory neuron towards the spinal cord, along the dorsal root of the spinal nerve. Here, in the spinal cord, the sensory neuron makes synaptic contact with the connector neuron or interneuron, where the impulse is transported along the motor neuron, along the ventral root of the spinal nerve to the effector, which contracts and makes him pull his foot away. As you can see, the marks is 6 marks, and there's many ticks here. So here, obviously, they were looking for any 6. 2.4. Mary did an investigation in the laboratory to look at the effects of different concentrations of auxin on cell elongation in coleoptils. Coleoptils are young stems. She used the following procedure. 15 coleoptils from one species of oat plants were used. All the coleoptils used were of the same length. The tips of the 12 coleoptils were cut off. These coleoptils were put in groups A, B, C, and D. Each group of the 3 coleoptils were injected with a different concentration of auxin as shown in the table. The last group E was used as a control in which the coleoptils were not injected with auxin and the tips were not cut off. After 4 days, the length of the coleoptils in each group were measured and the average was calculated. Now, 241. Formulate a hypothesis for the investigation. Now, a hypothesis must have your dependent and your independent variable. So that's very, very important. Now, let's look at the whole investigation. They want to look at the concentrations. They're looking at the auxin concentrations, how it's affecting cell elongation. If you look at the memo has many options. So you could have said cell elongation in the coleoptils will increase as auxin concentration increases. Cell elongation will decrease as the auxin concentration decreases. Remember, you don't know what's going to happen if it's going to increase or decrease the cell elongation. Cell elongation will remain the same as the auxin concentration increases or decreases. Cell elongation will differ as the auxin concentration differs. Remember, the only thing they're looking for is the 2 variables, auxin concentration, cell elongation, and whatever relationship. So you could have had the word increase, decrease, or differs. 242. Identify the dependent variable. What are you measuring? You are measuring the length of the coleoptils, okay? Which is obviously cell elongation. Identify the independent variable. What are you controlling? The concentration of the auxin. Here the memo also accepts amount. Then 243. Why was the tip of each coleoptil cut off before they were injected with auxin? The tip is cut off because you want to remove the effect of auxin. Now, and you are injecting it with different auxin. So you want to see how your experiment is to see the different concentrations. So by removing the effect of the auxin, you prevent the different concentrations produced by each plant. So you don't want the concentrations produced by the different plants to affect your results as well. 244. State 2 other factors that should have been kept constant in all the groups. They should have used 1 type of soil, same amount of water or light or temperature, same size pot, same environmental conditions. Right. And then 245. What conclusion can be drawn from the results? Can you see? Increasing the auxin concentration, what does it do? It increases the cell elongation up to an optimum concentration, and then it will decrease it. Okay. And then it decreases cell elongation. Sorry, don't say it. Right. 3.1. Study the graph below that shows changes in the shape of the lens and answer the questions that follow. Write on the letter only of the graph that illustrates the adaptation of the following cases. Now, 3.1.1. We must match each of these 4 statements to the graphs. A mother is watching a toddler riding a bicycle away from her. So, of course, here it's away from her. So, it's going from near vision to distant vision. So, the answer, obviously, the best graph, then, of course, is B. So, you can see the lens is changing shape from more convex to less convex. 3.1.2. A cricket player watching a cricket ball being bowled towards him. That is, of course, C. So, it's going from distant vision to near vision. C. 313. A teacher checking a learner's homework in the book. Yeah. So the teacher's checking the learner's homework in the book. There's no change. It's near, so it stays the same. That's a nice question. And then they ask you, 314, explain your answer for 313. So they're asking you what happens for 6 marks for near vision. The ciliary muscle will contract, suspensory ligaments slacken, tension on the lens decreases, lens becomes more convex, refractive power of the lens increases, and a clear image of the book is formed on the retina. And the compulsory mark is accommodation. Grade 12s, you should have a set answer written down for accommodation for near and distant vision. So when you're given questions like this, you don't have to think. You should just regurgitate. Right. 3.2. Study the diagram of the human endocrine glands and answer the questions that follow. 321. Identify the gland number 1. Number 1 is, of course, the pituitary gland. Identify the gland number 2, that's the thyroid gland. Identify gland number 3, that is the pancreas. And D, which is obviously not here in the memo, state the function of the gland D, which is the adrenal gland, produces aldosterone. Right. Then 3.3. The concentration of glucose in the blood is regulated by hormones. When the concentration of glucose in the blood rises or falls to dangerous levels, several organs in the body are affected. 331. Name 2 organs that can be affected by the abnormal glucose levels. A very nice question. The kidney and the liver muscles. 332. Suggest 2 problems that may arise in the body if the glucose concentration is not controlled. A nice question as well. When the glucose of concentration rises to dangerous levels, the kidneys are unable to absorb the excess glucose. Glucose appears in the urine that can lead to kidney damage or failure. Or when the glucose of concentration of glucose drops to dangerous levels, the glycogen is not stored in the liver and the muscles. Glycogen cannot be converted into glucose and it can lead to a diabetic coma or death. This is a very nice question. And here, you had to talk about when it's not controlled, when it's high or low. So you can see it's any 2 marks. Very nice question. Make a note of it. 333. How can the glucose concentration in the blood be controlled if it rises above normal? You know this. Insulin is injected into the bloodstream, and that will stimulate the conversion of glucose into glycogen. 334. Name the condition that is caused by high glucose levels in the blood. That's easy. Diabetes. Right. 3.4. Study the representation below and answer the questions that follow. 341. Define homeostasis. Homeostasis is the maintenance of a constant internal environment by living organisms within narrow limits, irrespective of changes in the external environment. A nice definition. Write it down. 342. Name the homeostatic process represented in the diagram. Here you can see in the picture the person is running, he's getting hot, right? And you can see radiation is occurring in his body, so that is thermoregulation. 343. Which environmental temperature will lead to an increase in metabolic rate? Okay, so which environmental temperature will lead to an increase in metabolism? Low environmental temperature. And 344. Describe the role of blood vessels labeled 6 and regulate the body temperature. Now, they're talking about now when it is cold. So what happens when it is cold? Of course, we know. And it's talking specifically of 6, right? In cold weather, so vasoconstriction will take place. Less blood flows to the surface of the skin, right? Less blood carries heat. Less heat is lost in the body. The sweat glands will produce less sweat, less cooling of the body, and the body temperature will return back to normal. Right, 3.5. Study the diagram of part of the human ear and answer the questions that follow. 3.5.1. Identify structures A. A is the tympanic membrane. I see the memo has eardrum here. Try not to use the word eardrum. 351. Identify structures B. B, the ossicles. 351C, identify structure C. That, of course, is the oval window. 352. State the function of part D. That's the round window. It prevents pressure buildup of waves and absorbs pressure from the inner ear. And the last question, 353. Explain why a parachutist who has a severe head cold should be advised not to participate in any parachute jumping activity until the head cold is cleared. The head cold will result in a blocked eustachian tube. There will be unequal pressure on either side of the tympanic membrane, and the tympanic membrane may burst. Right. 3.6. Records of human fertility for the period 1971 to 2020 have shown changes in the sperm counts of men. The table below shows the changing numbers of men with high or low sperm counts over a period of 50 years. So here you have your time period in the years. There you have the number of men with high sperm count per 100, men with low sperm count per 100. Now, 361. Calculate the percentage decrease of men with the high sperm count between 1971 and 2020. Now, that's quite easy. It's 600 minus 250, so that's the difference over the first number, which is 600 times 100, and it is 58.3%. Okay, 362. Draw a bar graph to show the number of men with a high sperm count and a low sperm count from 1971 to 2020, and there's the graph here next to us. We can see there's the spaces. You have your number of men with high or low sperm count on the one variable, time in years. There you have your key number of men with high sperm count and low sperm count, and then you have your heading. You got marks for the type of graph, the caption, correct labels for X and Y axis, correct scale, and all the bars plotted correctly. Then 3.63. Analyze what happens between men with high sperm count and men with low sperm count over a 50-year period. So, what does it mean? You can see that the number of men with low sperm count increased from 1971 to 2020, and the number of men with high sperm count has decreased from 1971 to 1920. From 1971 to 2020, sorry. So number of men with low sperm count increased. Number of men with high sperm count decreased. And where can you see that? Of course, that's just in the table. Right. Thank you, grade 12s, for watching this video. I hope you learned a lot. Join me and watch all my other videos as well.